A farmer can make 3, 5, 10, over 20 times more per acre growing crops than they can grazing sheep or cattle. So why do they graze animals? Why don't they just grow crops? Wouldn't they make more money? And wouldn't that be better for the environment? To explore this, let's go to a really rich agricultural area in the Hepburn Shire. Now, the Hepburn Shire is known for many things, but one of those is its incredibly fertile volcanic soils. And those soils come from volcanoes like this one, which is Mount Franklin. And here I'm right in the bowl of the volcano. Extinct volcanoes like Mount Franklin are all across this landscape. And they've given us incredible red volcanic soils. And they're incredible not just because they're incredibly fertile, but it's also their structure. The soils are free draining, so even with incredible rainfall, they don't tend to stay clogged and puggy. They drain away pretty quickly. But at the same time, they're very sponge-like, so they retain a lot of moisture within the soil that is available for the plants to use weeks after rain. The rainfall here is abundant, like over a metre of rainfall, or for the Americans, over 40 inches of rain per annum. It's not just that it's abundant, but it's predictable, it's reliable, and while it's concentrated in the winter, it is actually spread throughout the year. Plus, that sponge-like nature of the soil means that the winter rains fall onto the soil. They don't run off because they drain through the soil, and they're collected in that soil sponge and then are slowly released over time. So it's not just rainfall that we have here, but incredible groundwater resources. Most of the larger farms in this area have spring-fed dams, and on my mum's farm we had a spring-fed dam where not only did the springs not dry up during the summer, but the dam kept on overflowing even in the driest of dry droughts when I was growing up. So you would think with those benefits it would be possible to crop 100% of your land all the time, but it's not, and it's not for two reasons. The first is that most farmers still don't have enough water to irrigate crops, and it's only with irrigation that you get high productive cropping. The farmers that do have water tend to only have enough irrigation water that they can crop 20 to 30% of their land, and that's it. And that's the primary reason you see so much of the land around here given over to pasture and cattle and sheep grazing. It's because there's just not enough water. Now, just in case anyone's thinking it, yes, Australia is the driest continent on Earth, but this area that I'm talking about has a higher average rainfall than Pennsylvania, Maine, Virginia. Almost every single agricultural area in the world is limited by water. But even beyond that, this volcanic soil, even though it's incredibly fertile, has limits. And so what farmers will often do is that they'll farm in a rotation. Crops are incredibly heavy feeders. They mine the soil, they exploit the soil for its nutrient resources. And it takes time for the soil to recover naturally. For the minerals, the soluble minerals and soluble nutrients that are in the soil are used up, and then those that are bound within the mineral substance of the soil are released over time. But that process can take years. And so often what farmers will do is they'll have a rotation. They'll grow a heavy feeding crop, like in this area, potatoes or beetroot or cabbage, and then they will revert back to a light feeding crop like a cereal before going back to a restorative, regenerative process of pasture and grazing. And after they've done that for a couple of years, they'll then go back and the land will be cropped again in a cycle. Now, it is possible with modern methods, chemical fertilizers, to grow crop after crop after crop in land like this, but it comes with consequences. First of all, you destroy the soil biology. You destroy the carbon content of the soil, and you destroy the structure of the soil, making it more prone to runoff and less sponge-like, less absorbent. Secondly, of course, there's all those massive consequences for all the industrial production of all those chemical fertilizers. So what farmers do, even the most boneheaded anti-environmental farmers do, is they crop and they graze in rotation. And that way you maximize the productivity, not of the ground, but of the farm, of the landscape. And this brings me to the crux of what of the point I'm making with this video. Advocates of a vegan diet, vegan lifestyle, say that we should all give up animal-based foods, because animal-based foods are bad for the environment. So let's just say we did give up farming animals. That's not going to release any land so that it's available for more crop production, because pretty much farmers are already managing their land to maximize crop production, because they make a lot more money from crops per acre than they do from grazing. And without that food coming from those grazing activities, that's going to mean that more crops are needed, which is going to increase the impact. Now, it gets complicated because, of course, yes, though there's a bunch of animals that are no longer going to be fed crops. But that discussion is not simple. And there are no clear-cut answers in that, because there are pros and there are cons. And it's very context and market dependent. Here in Australia, in fact, most of the world, most meat that we eat is produced from grazing. Whereas in North America, most meat is produced from confined animal agriculture, where the animals need to be fed crops. Now, the reality is that no ecosystem exists in the world that doesn't have animals. Animals are part of the way life functions, and it's not possible to farm in a sustainable way only producing plants. At some point, there needs to be animals within that cycle. Now, unfortunately, I don't have simple answers to give you, but I can give you some guidelines to sort of steer you in the right direction. For example, you can do your best to avoid the meat that comes from confined animal agriculture. That's cattle feedlots, piggeries, chicken barns, that sort of thing. But also have a look at where your fruit and veg comes from. And if possible, try and get more of a relationship with the farmers that produce those goods, whether it's remotely via online, or if possible, join a community supported agriculture program to get, a fruit and veg box, once a week, once a month, or whatever. Simple answers like give up meat are always going to be intoxicating, because they're simple, they're easy. You can get a quick fixed sense of comfort and security and virtue. The reality is that you have an impact on the environment, and you need to do the best you can, but also try and make your best continually better. So I hope you found this useful, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye-bye.